Good morning, everybody. A warm welcome to everyone who's joining us today in person or online. My name is Tom Slay. I'm the chair of this subcommittee. It's the 25th of March, 10 a.m. And I would just like to hand over to the town clerk for the preamble, please.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this meeting of the Planning Application Subcommittee being held on Wednesday, the 25th of March. As you are aware, the public element of today's meeting is being live streamed, and those participating in the meeting have given consent to their inclusion. The recording will be available on the City Corporation's YouTube channel following the meeting, and it shall be retained for up to 1 civic year. Whilst we endeavour to live stream all our public meetings, technical difficulties may sometimes prevent live broadcast. In these instances, we aim to upload a recording after the end of the meeting. All personal data will be processed in accordance with the Data Protection Act 2018, and for any further information on that, please feel free to contact us. Please be aware that microphones will be on at a low level at all times, and background sounds could be picked up.
Thank you, Town Clerk. So moving on through the agenda, I would like to start by welcoming back Philip, Kelvin and Jaspreet Hodgson, who've rejoined Planning Application Subcommittee since a brief interregnum, so you're most welcome to join us again. I've received apologies from Alderman Prem Goyle, Josephine Hayes, who said to me she would endeavour to join this meeting online. Are we aware of any others? And Naresh Sompar, so we'll note those. Thank you. Items under the Code of Conduct. Does anyone have any declarations they need to make today? It's a negative. Now, the minutes of the meeting from the 10th of February are not yet available. We have therefore decided, if it's the will of this subcommittee, that once myself and the Deputy Chairman are content with the content of them, they will be circulated to all members of this committee for comments, and then will be submitted to the following meeting in May, welcome Madhush, for final approval by this subcommittee. Hopefully that is okay. Thank you. Okay, we're going to move on then to the substantive item today. We have one substantive planning application regarding number 1 poultry. I'll just remind you of the process that we will follow today. We will first of all have the officer presentation. Our Assistant Director responsible for design, Tom Nancollis, will give the presentation. He assures me it's precisely 11 minutes, so but we won't keep you to that, Tom. We then will have a presentation from the applicants, and colleagues, you can then ask clarifying questions of the applicants, because I believe there are no objectors speaking today. That's right, they would have registered.
That's correct, Chair.
That is correct. So that's why we're going to go straight into applicants. Then you'll have a chance to ask further questions of our officers before we move into the debate. And then we'll finally vote. So, with no further ado, Mr. Nancollis, if you could please present the officer's report.
Thank you, Chair. And just to confirm or clarify, we do have an objector registered to speak today.
Sorry, thank you. That's really helpful. That wasn't on my notes. So we will, before the applicants, we will hear from the objectors and have a chance to ask them questions. That's just to be clear.
Great.
Thanks for the clarification.
Thank you. And thank you, Chair and members. Good morning, members. So the applications before you today are planning and listed builder consent applications for number 1 poultry, the seminal and sometimes controversial work of postmodernism at the heart of Bank Junction, shown here on the application slide. And just to start, 2 addendums to the main report were circulated yesterday afternoon to pick up on some minor corrections to the main report and to give you sight of some late representations to the applications. So the building is widely recognisable and probably well known to most members of this committee, shown here on this slide addressing Bank Junction. And though it's a relatively youthful listed building, it has an architectural gravitas which enables it to hold its own at this junction and this clustering of seminal presences, the former Midland Bank, the Bank of England, the Royal Exchange, and others, the Mansion House and others shown here. It's also within the bank conservation area at the western fringe. And this aerial view shows the special architectural and historic interest of the building in headline and outline. The building was listed at Grade 2 star in 2015 for these qualities, and members may note its muscular architectural character, its clever and precise geometry, offset by its playful pastel colour scheme, and also the constituent features of the exterior, notable ones, amongst them the prow entrance addressing Bank Junction with the turret above, the colonnades to the south elevation along Queen Victoria Street and also the north, the wide and very prominent circular rotunda space at roof level, indeed the very elaborate and active roofscape that the building possesses. The building was always designed with a spatial complexity and character at its heart, and members can see here the original ground floor layout showing the retail units at ground floor level with the pub on the corner of Queen Victoria Street, the central well and route of Bucklersbury through the middle. The rooftop was accessed through scenic lifts either side of an original office reception, which was shown here in light blue. There was also a more special civic route to the rooftop through the prow, shown on the right-hand side, which took the visitor through these spaces, the Scala Regia, from ground to first floor level rotunda. Although it's important to note that these spaces never seem to have been regularly used or have functioned quite in the way they were originally intended, and have been largely lost certainly to public view in the building's recent history. So the rooftop, perhaps one of the most compelling and famous parts of the building, is shown here. There is a restaurant at the west end of the building, shown in the orange roof, then the circular rotunda serving that restaurant and a public roof garden also, and then the apex roof garden shown to the right. Now, these areas are active and were accessible, but they were not elevated public spaces in the way we think of them today as free to access for all. They were, in the main, accessed by customers of the restaurant and by members of the public in a less kind of clear way of the building's lifespan. So the proposals before you would be comparatively modest externally. There would be not very many external changes, but there would be spatial reconfiguration of the building in various places. As part of the proposals aims to sustain and enhance the building's function as an office building, serving the city's strategic economic objective. And it is these spatial reconfigurations and small-scale additions which have drawn objections from members from the heritage and architectural community. And those objections are such that the scheme has been referred to you for consideration today. Normally, members would not see refurbishment schemes of this scale. So to note the main external additions, if I flick back and forwards, you can see that there are some small-scale pavilions proposed for the circular rotunda, some awnings at the base of the building in the colonnades, and small extensions to the restaurant area, which would be converted to office as part of this scheme. Also to note that on the right-hand side, there would be a dedicated new public access to a dedicated elevated public space in the Apex Garden. And this shows you the proposals in section, with the office lobby established in the southwest corner of the building in an area where there is now an existing office reception established a few years ago under a previous consent. Note also the activation of the retail units and the main bulk of the office space throughout the building's interior. And just to make the point, really, that the bulk of the works are taking place inside these office interiors, which are of neutral character and heritage significance, and therefore the bulk of the proposals has a neutral impact overall on the building's significance and brings it up to a Category A standard. And there would be small enhancements through the restoration of the lift lobbies as originally intended, pictured here. So to return to the spatial reprogramming, perhaps the biggest change here is the changes at ground floor level, particularly within Bucklersbury, which turn the scenic lifts inwards and join them to the main office lift bank, now accessed or proposed to be accessed through the office reception shown in light blue. Bucklersbury would receive some light touch public realm enhancements, but you would no longer be able to access the rooftop from there. Instead, members of the public would access the roof from the prow entrance, reactivated towards the east end of the building, addressing Bank Junction. And one can see here as well the awnings proposed. These are some of the small-scale external additions proposed to emphasize the entrances and the retail units as part of the applicant's desire to reposition the building and signal its revived office use. And they would take the form of hemispherical bronze canopies, picking up the bullnose geometry of the granite cornice above and recessed into the colonnade, as one can see in the section on the left-hand side of this slide, and also the main picture showing the office reception and how those awnings would appear next to it. So, turning to the roof, the orange area is the restaurant demise, the circular rotunda garden accessed through the restaurant, and the Apex Garden accessed from the Rotunda Garden, interlinked spaces as originally conceived. And under the proposals, the rooftop uses would be more sharply defined and clarified. So the office reception, the office here would take the place of the restaurant with modest extensions. And the Rotunda Garden would become the external office amenity, which of course is essential for office buildings, whether they are listed or not. Now, the office area here would be modestly extended, as I have said, and this would take the form of these angular small-scale extensions finished in bronze, which would pick up on the geometries of the building below. Inside the Rotunda Garden, 2 pill-shaped pavilions for impromptu meetings, events, and that sort of thing. In the office amenity areas would look like this. And additionally, the currently stepped access around the rotunda would be levelled and ramped, so introducing a small accessibility improvement. Returning to ground, and the Prow public entrance would be reopened permanently and staffed and managed as an entrance for the public to access the roof garden. It would look like this, and there would be sight lines but not physical access to that Scala Regia stair between ground and first floor. Albeit this glazed partition you see there would be, in fact, a door that could be opened 12 times a year to allow the public a behind-the-scenes tour of the architecture. Nevertheless, so the route planned for the public would go up through the stairs, the existing stairs and lift, which would be extended upwards to the 5th floor level, as shown here diagrammatically, where the public would enter to a sort of 5th floor vestibule space, including access to this circular turret room to learn about the architectural history and special interest of the building, before continuing their journey up via stairs or a platform lift here to the Apex Garden. This is arguably the part of the building's rooftop which enjoys the best views over not only the bank conservation area, but also towards the city cluster. It was designed, the layout was that of Arabella Lennox Boyd's, as you can see on the left-hand side, originally turfed with lawn, subsequently modified to AstroTurf, and the proposals would retain the essential spatial character of the garden, but pave it and increase the walkable area to allow for a capacity of up to 80 members of the public. The hours of operation of the garden would be 7 days a week in the summer months and 6 days a week in the winter months, both including weekends, and full details of this are set out in the report and would be secured under the 106 agreement. But it would be a seminal new elevated public space, guaranteed for use by the public regardless of their means, to enjoy these incredible views over the conservation area and over towards the cluster, a fine new addition to the city's elevated public spaces. And the access arrangements I have mentioned would look like this. An existing spiral staircase would be extended or transformed into a platform lift with a circular bronze enclosure. The staircase existing would be extended upwards by a floor level. The enclosure is necessary, the lift enclosure is necessary to make the lift weathertight and therefore resilient, providing resilient and guaranteed access to all those who require this form of access. Now, on the subject of suicide prevention, the suicide prevention measures proposed for the scheme have been at the heart of the design process since the beginning, and they have been through a rigorous process of assessment through specialist suicide prevention officers. The scheme would greatly improve the protective measures around the roof compared with the existing situation, and it would take a proportional approach to this by establishing appropriate heights proportional to the risk and proportional to the public and non-public areas of the rooftop, all in line with our adopted guidance on this matter and in accordance with the city's specialist suicide prevention advisor's advice. And that shows you how the balustrade heights would be at head height or above throughout. Turning to the views now, looking down Cheapside towards the building existing and proposed, showing the relatively, really quite modest external alterations proposed here with the lift overrun just peeking out at the rooftop. Towards the end of the building, the awnings recessed into the colonnades. And again, looking south down Old Jewry existing and proposed, showing the awnings and the roof extension proposed just peeking out there. Again, similarly, through Queen Victoria Street, looking towards Bank Junction existing and proposed, and then closer up, showing the building's elevation existing and proposed, incidentally showing the full replacement of the curtain wall glazing, which is part of a wider range of measures that are less visible, including replacing the roof membrane to improve the performance of the envelope and therefore the building's energy efficiency. This is perhaps the most important set of views of the building, as set out in the report, where you can really appreciate its special interest, its muscular character, its poised and precise symmetry. And under the proposals, the proposed view would be like this. Hard to see a change here, but if one looks closely, one can see the lift over and peeking out just behind the turret wing, introducing a note of asymmetry which officers have carefully considered, concluded a slight degree of harm would arise from this and some of the spatial reprogramming, but as set out in the report, vastly outweighed by the benefits of the scheme and justified through design optioneering. So to conclude, the proposals reorientate the building towards Bank Junction. They reactivate this important entrance as a dedicated public entrance to a public space at the roof, sharply defining the public use up there, but also adjusting its perception as a place that can be accessed by all. The proposals would also improve the building's energy efficiency and would provide best-in-class office space so that the building can better serve the city's strategic economic objectives and fulfill its civic potential. So for members, for all these reasons and those set out in the report, the scheme, list of building consent and planning applications recommended to you for approval. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you very much. And I think you were bang on time, so much appreciated. Just as a note to colleagues, I mean, this, as you probably have detected, is not a massively significant change, externally at least, and it's not the kind we would, at least under our existing protocols, be dealt with under delegation by officers, but a sufficient number of objections came in, which is why the committee are hearing it today, which is possibly a question that some were going to ask. I should also correct that my notes did say we had an objector. It was me who didn't see that in my notes, so apologies. We therefore have one objector, Mr. Lawrence Bain. Mr. Bain, if I could ask you please to come to the lectern. And while you're coming, individual speakers have a maximum of 5 minutes in this committee. And we have a lighting system. I always get this wrong. So when the light starts off green, when both lights are on together, you have 30 seconds. And then when it's just red, it's time to stop. And we do try and keep people to time in this committee. So we'll start when you start talking, Mr. to take a moment to get yourself established.
Could I first of all explain who I am and who I'm representing, please, before you start?
Absolutely, yeah, of course you can do that. And then we'll start the timer when you've introduced yourself.
Good morning. My name is Lawrence Bain. I was appointed by James Sterling, Michael Wilford and Associates in 1986 as the project architect. I worked on the project from the beginning to completion in 1998, and it was then subject to various other legal cases thereafter, and the book was closed in the early 2000s.
Thank you.
This building is part of, sorry, I'm not finished yet.
I think that's a sufficient introduction to you, to who you are. So now we'll start the time, please, for your 5 minutes. Thank you.
Okay, so I'll do this within the time.
Yes.
I'm a representative of James Sterling, Michael Wilford and Associates. That includes the members of the Sterling family who support what I am saying, and the Wilford family who support what I am saying, and a whole team of architects and other consultants that worked with me during the design and construction process. JSMWA object to the proposals as they stand on multiple planning, listed building and legal grounds. The proposals are disrespectful to JSMWA, multiple consultants, and demonstrably to the City of London predecessors, your predecessors, who required, as part of the design process, for public accessible roof garden, inspired by Peter Rees and an integral part of the whole planning process. This was enforced with various planning conditions at multiple times. To dispel any rumours that the roof garden is not publicly accessible today, it is. You can take the lifts in 20 seconds, walk out the scenic lifts, walk around the public gardens. You're perfectly free to do that. That was actually confirmed earlier today by the Coq d'Argent site manager. There is no time to explain the history of the project. The presentation you've just seen relies entirely on the images provided by the applicant. Sadly, not the images that James Stirling used at the public inquiry that was held in this space. Based on the officer's report, the primary reason that you may recommend this approval is all to do with the last paragraph, that the City of London support projects that are seen to improve economic viability. This is disputable in this case and has not been demonstrated anywhere in the application. We do not know what the applicant is trying to do other than acquire as many public square feet for the use of office space. I have submitted to the planning officers a report that examines the commercial viability, and specifically. That report, I do not know whether you've seen a copy of it or whether you've had the opportunity to read it. That report shows a proposal that would allow public access, would maintain the public space in an agreement between the office and private, but would complete the integrity of the design. I would very much like the committee to read that report and the associated drawings as part of any decision process. I have also sent that report to the applicants and invited them to comment. In a few moments, when they stand up, I would like you to ask them what they believe is the reason why that proposal is not superior to their own proposal. It will give them more square feet. All it will require is an agreement between the city and them in terms of giving public access. It will maintain the integrity of the design. No longer will 80% of the roof be shut off to the public. That is the fact about their proposals. They remain, the only vestige is the prow. James Stirling was an eminent architect, world famous. He received the RIBA Gold Medal. We have built buildings. I personally have built buildings in Germany for him, and other parts of the United Kingdom. He's also built buildings in the United States. The city has, one, a building at Bank Junction that was designed specifically by Jim for that location. Two, a city by an eminent architect, world famous. I would argue that those are the two most positive aspects in terms of any commercial aspect to do with this building. They can also be maintained in a way that allows, sorry, I've got the red light.
No, you've got 30 seconds, sir. Please carry on.
Oh, well, I would just like to ask the developer to stand up in a moment. Ask him if he has read my report, and ask him or her, I don't know who, and to confirm or otherwise whether they believe there's a sensible way forward where we can sit together as a group and agree a design that gives public access, maintains the garden, restores aspects of the Stirling design, and in effect makes it commercially much more viable. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Bain. Do just stay there for a second, because you may have questions asked of you. And I'm just looking for hands. And first of all, we'll go to Tana Atkin.
Thank you. Is this microphone working? Mr. Bain, I do have a question because I just want to understand, in relation to public access, to this very important building.
Yes.
And I know that obviously initially when it was conceived, public access was fundamental to the use of the building. And I don't subscribe to a use it or lose it strategy, but the public access that's being proposed, the restriction, am I right in understanding that there won't be public access to the Scala Regia part of the building any longer? Is that right?
There'll be no public. There was, with respect to the officer, there was a misstatement in terms of the way in which public access was designed. That's why it was a pity that actually the presentation was not based on James Stirling's proof of evidence to the public inquiry. They explained all the access points. Firstly, I would like to say that the whole idea of the roof garden being publicly accessible was part of an agenda by the City of London post-Big Bang to make spaces more open to the public. We talked in the building over there with Peter Rees on a number of occasions, presented him with options to show how this whole system of access would work. Peter Rees embraced these options. Peter Rees supported them to the planning committee. It was defeated by 1 vote. It then went to a whole appeals process, was examined in detail. There are conditions on planning applications that explicitly say it is a public restaurant and publicly accessible roof garden. The reason for the restaurant being next to the roof garden was to provide facilities for people who wished to visit the public restaurant to go to the toilet, to shelter, to sit down, and as Jim Stirling put in his proof of evidence, to have a cup of Coca-Cola or something while enjoying the views and the setting sun.
Thank you for that response. Madhush, you have a clarifying question?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just in terms of retaining the existing scheme, the integrity of the scheme, as you say, thank you for your comments. Do you believe that a restaurant is financially sustainable and viable on that site at this moment in time?
All I can say to you in that regard specifically is when it came to the restaurant, and there is actually from the Dita Box team, Dita Box had a team called Advanta. They have written in a letter to yourselves explaining the economic strategy on completion of the building. The roof garden and restaurant, when it was nearing completion, received multiple bids. Terence Conran won the bid. Terence Conran established the Coq d'Argent restaurant as an open public restaurant, fully understanding all of the things, described it as the jewel in his crown of restaurants, and it was highly profitable. After the office space, the roof garden was, well, the roof restaurant was in the same league in terms of rental values per square foot at that time. This has probably been lost in the sands of time as the building has passed from one owner to another. That might well be the case. The roof garden has certainly become a cluttered mess. It is not nearly as beautiful as it was when completed. It should be put back to the way it was before. If you want to change the roof because of the sui generis situation to office use, and that is seen as the priority of the applicant, then they can do that. But there is the aspect that they should not be allowed to do is to take away the whole entry sequence, the lifts, the scenic lifts, which take 20 seconds to get you to the roof. Their scheme will take you minutes. It is not functional, it is dysfunctional. The fact that you see in that image somebody sitting in a wheelchair. A wheelchair user can, when we designed the building, could go into the concourse level, could go in and enter the scenic lifts, could into the ground floor level and enter the scenic lifts, could go in the first floor level, enter the scenic lifts and go straight to the roof garden. In 2026...
Mr. Bain, you were asked a question about restaurant viability. I fear you're slightly straying into other matters. So this is
with respect, sir, I would just like to explain one aspect of what my office...
If you could explain away, but do please try and be concise for the benefit of the committee.
Okay. It's all about integration of multiple functions. In our buildings, and it's very many reviews in multiple magazines, in historians say Stirling's genius was he could put all the functions together in the best way possible. These proposals are chopping off aspects of that situation.
Thank you, and thank you for summarising. Colleagues, any more questions to the objectors? Marianne Fredericks.
Thank you, Chair. The roof level has been described as the fifth dimension. I think Peter Reeves described it as such when it came to planning. And I think the whole purpose, it was groundbreaking to have the public use up there. To me, the restaurant size is sort of ancillary to the outside space. It doesn't really look large enough to be an office use. So can you just explain a little bit more about the condition that was agreed to ensure that it didn't have a change of use to office? And I'd also like to understand more about the accessibility of the building and that fantastic staircase that elevates itself from the ground up to the rotunda. It's rather like the City of Waterloo walkway going down, as if people emerge from Bank Tube Station into the building, into the lights, into the different aspects of the different levels and floors. So could you just explain a little bit more about these conditions which were to ensure that that fifth dimension remained in situ and the accessibility of the building? Thank you.
Peter Rees actually called it the fifth elevation, and it was part of the agenda in the city to develop roof spaces. And it was the first in the city and has inspired many others. Even on that basis, it is worth conserving. The apex entrance, in terms of the officer's report, was not described in the way that Jim describes it in the public, to the public inquiry. The reason that the apex is the way it is to give a corporate or a corporate identity when viewed from Bank Junction. Jim talked about the view of the building from the Duke of Wellington's statue. From the Duke of Wellington statue, it looks like an office building, similar to all the other buildings around Bank. It is symmetrical, similar to all the other buildings around Bank. When that was completed, members of the public could enter the building by that route and walk up the Scala Regia, take the lifts at first floor level to the roof, or people going into the offices could walk up the Scala Regia and enter the offices from that route. It was publicly accessible and managed in that way after completion. The only reason that it's been closed is mismanagement. If you visit it today, you will see that there are signs still in place for WeWork. In 2026, as part of what I called the compromise deal, when the City of London, through the officer, said, we have a commercial situation here, the owners are saying we have to make the building commercially lettable, along comes WeWork. And that is where, and as part of the deal, WeWork was supposed to open the apex entrance, but they didn't. Of course, WeWork have now gone, so that whole premise, in essence, has fallen away.
Marianne, was there a second part to your question?
It does. And can I just also ask about the symmetrical image of the building?
Yes.
What's your opinion of the lift popping up? Why wasn't the lift originally brought all the way up to the roof? Was that because you had the two scenic lifts and that wasn't deemed necessary to bring it up to the prow?
You used a word there that is absolutely fundamental to this whole design: symmetry. Symmetry solves all the problems of access, where to go, how to get into the building, how to circulate around the building. It is fundamental. In terms of the prow entrance, or the apex entrance as we called it, there were options in terms of you could enter to go to the offices, walk up the Scala Regia, take the scenic lifts to the roof or go into the offices. Or if you were in a wheelchair, you could use the firefighting lift. What I find extremely disappointing in the application is that the firefighting strategy, the fire exit strategy, which is integral for the whole building, you cannot mess around with one part of that strategy and not look at the whole building. I would also like to point out that I pointed out on a number of occasions that they are missing fire signs, that the ramps on sorry, I'm diverging, sorry.
Thank you for catching yourself there. That was very helpful. I think, sir, we will draw...
Sorry, Chair.
Sorry, Marianne.
Answer my question about the condition attached to the
So,
restaurant.
Sorry,
Not going over to office.
sorry Madam. In the public access to the roof garden was all part of the public inquiry that eventually went to the Secretary of State, so it was locked in, as actually were the elevations on Queen Victoria Street and Poultry. They were locked in. At that point in time, we went through 2 further planning applications, both of which relate to the public accessibility of the roof garden, and there are conditions attached to those 2 planning applications that explicitly say that the restaurant must remain as subservient to the roof garden, and that the restaurant must not become offices. Now, of course, the reason that they are now promoting the change of use from restaurant to offices is all to do with the change in legislation and the sui generis Section 106 agreements.
Thank you. Mr. Bain, thank you very much. Thank you for your passion and for your answers to quite a few thoughtful questions from the committee. You may take your seat now, and while you're doing that, I'd like to invite the supporters to come up to the lectern. I have Mr. Henry Brown, Ben Cross, the applicant, and Kuros Sarshar, the architect, down to speak. You have a total between you of 10 minutes, individually a maximum of 5. And that's a cap, by the way, not necessarily an aim, so you can speak for less. I'm just waiting to see if they're coming up to the lectern. It may take a few moments for the various papers and folders to be shuffled. Thank you.
I would like them to read this, please.
Thank you. Very good. I think, again, I'll introduce you. Am I right in thinking, Mr. Brown, you're speaking first? Is that right? Fine. So you know the lighting protocol, just checking you do?
Yes.
You do? Very good. Well, as soon as you start talking, therefore, the lights will come on. Over to you.
Good morning, Chair and members of the subcommittee, and thank you for the opportunity to speak to you on behalf of the applicant and building owner. Throughout this process, we have worked closely with city officers whose engagement and thoughtful advice during the pre-application stages has helped shape and improve the scheme. We have also benefited from constructive and proactive dialogue with Historic England. As they have noted, Number 1 Poultry is one of the most celebrated examples of postmodern architecture in the country, and the proposals before you reflect a shared objective to carefully reinvigorate this landmark building so that it continues to contribute positively to the city. It is an absolute privilege to be working with one of the city's most distinctive buildings. Its architectural pedigree has been central to our approach from the outset, and our focus at all times on respecting the building's significance while carefully adapting it for the next chapter in its life. At its heart, this project is about responsible stewardship of a Grade 2-star listed building. The aim to ensure that Number 1 Poultry remains competitive, occupied, and relevant within the city's commercial core while fully respecting its architectural importance. Even buildings of this stature were never intended to be frozen in time. They were designed, like the city, to evolve and remain part of the living fabric. And now, after 3 decades of use, the building requires careful updating. The proposals focus on how the building works in practice rather than academics. This includes meaningful improvements to accessibility, environmental performance, and the way in which the building connects with the public realm. A major sustainable retrofit forms the backbone of our scheme. The building will remain largely unchanged architecturally, with many elements carefully repaired, some even original design features never delivered, made good, and while the services will transition to an all-electric system to support its long-term environmental performance. It is perhaps worth noting that the rooftop could lawfully change to office use without the need for planning permission. Instead, we have worked closely with city officers, and we have introduced managed public access to the rooftop garden. This will allow visitors to experience the building and enjoy views across the city in a welcoming and safe environment. Historically, access to the roof has exclusively been tied to a commercial restaurant. We do not doubt that the spaces up there are publicly accessible, but our proposals introduce a free-to-use model of managed public access, allowing a far wider range of visitors to experience these spaces. More broadly, the project represents a significant long-term investment in an important city landmark. It reflects confidence in the continued vitality of the City of London and will help ensure that the building remains attractive to high-quality occupiers whilst contributing positively to the life of Bank Junction and the surrounding area. We have approached this project with care, with transparency, and with a deep respect for what this building represents. Our intention is simple: to responsibly steward this one-of-a-kind building so that it continues to perform well, welcomes visitors, and contributes to the architectural and commercial life of the City of London for decades to come. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And the next speaker, I believe, is Ben Cross. Very good. Mr. Cross, you're the applicant?
Kura Sarshar, John Robertson Architects.
Oh, I beg your pardon. I have the order different. Kura Sarshar, the architect, and your 5 minutes starts now.
Number One Poultry is an important building that makes a strong contribution to the character of the city and the experience of Bank Junction. Our intention in its refurbishment has been simple: respect that significance whilst ensuring it can continue to function effectively over time. We've carefully analysed the building, its design, planning history, and how it's operated over the past 25 years, alongside the evolution of Bank Junction itself. This has formed a proposal that's focused, precise, and grounded in how the building works today. The central architectural challenge, working within a highly resolved and recognisable composition, has been how to introduce change without undermining the clarity of the original design. At the same time, we've looked closely at how the building functions in practice, and after nearly 3 decades in use, part of the building now requires renewal. The roof waterproofing needs repair, accessibility to the roof is limited, and elements originally intended to be publicly experienced have become constrained over time. Alongside deferred major maintenance, a key driver has been to integrate a carefully considered environmental upgrade to the fabric of the building. These interventions are largely technical in nature, but they're essential to enable the building to continue to function sustainably. The scheme presented has been developed through an iterative process of testing and refinement in consultation with the city and key stakeholders. Our approach is guided by their feedback and 3 clear principles. First, retain the building's form, spatial relationships that give Number One Poultry a distinctive architectural character. Second, to intervene only where necessary in a targeted way so that the changes improve how the building functions whilst keeping the original design legible. And thirdly, to ensure that any new elements are clearly contemporary, reversible where possible, and carefully designed to complement the existing architecture. These principles underpin the key design moves. At ground level, the proposals strengthen the building's relationship with the surrounding public realm by clarifying the entrances and improving the legibility of access. At roof level, the spatial framework of the garden and the terraces is retained whilst enhancing accessibility, safety and amenities that support both the public and private use of the building. The terrace will be easier to manage in practice, helping to open up this unique space to a broader range of people and supporting the city's wider destination city ambitions. Across the building, carefully targeted fabric and service upgrades will dramatically improve the performance of the building whilst without altering the character of the original design. This is a considered and balanced response to a complex and important building. We're retaining what's significant, improving how the building works, and introducing change in a controlled and respectful way. In doing so, it supports the continued use of number 1 Poultry as an active and relevant part of the city. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sarshar. And then the final third applicant or speaker, I believe, if my notes are correct, is Mr. Cross.
There's that joke. So I'm Henry Brown, Associate.
Okay, sorry, I've got it all wrong.
Okay. So we're providing planning advice to the applicant on number 1 Poultry. So I'd like to thank your officers, firstly, who we've worked with closely to get the best outcome for both the site and the city. And we're joined by other members of our team today representing heritage, sustainability and transport, who can answer any questions afterwards. We understand and share the passion for the site and its architectural heritage, and the planning application that's before you come from a deep understanding of the full planning and heritage context, and that's been informed by detailed investigations into the history of the building by Alan Baxter Associates. The scheme delivers a number of clear and meaningful public benefits. It introduces step-free access to the public roof terrace for the first time. It secures a minimum of 1,600 hours of public access to the Apex Garden each year, which equates to access 7 days a week in summer and 6 days a week in winter, and this has been secured through Section 106. It also delivers a major sustainable retrofit, enhancing the existing listed building and making it fit for purpose for the future. Importantly, it is a fully planning policy compliant scheme, and it's clearly and comprehensively explained in the officer report. The building will remain in Class E, which is its current lawful use, but the proposals will enhance accessibility throughout the building, opening up spaces that have been difficult to reach and providing a far more inclusive experience for visitors and users of the building. The refurbishment takes a retrofit first approach, and it retains everything that's really important about the building and makes it recognisable and contributes to its heritage significance. The minor interventions being made are light touch and reversible, so the building will continue to be appreciated. There are a small number of works which cause minor harm to heritage significance, assessed as being at the lower end of that scale, lower end of less than substantial harm by both your officers and Historic England. Where there is harm, it's only to deliver something really important, such as level access to the Apex roof garden, and there are significant public benefits which outweigh the harm. The main element which you've seen which causes minor harm is the lift overrun, which is required to provide level access to the Apex roof terrace for the first time. It's the minimum size possible, and it's been designed in coordination with the city's design officer and access advisor. Views of the building from street level and outwards from the terrace have been fully tested, and the impact is negligible. The refurbishment will deliver a major performance upgrade by converting the building to an all-electric system, including air source heat pumps and solar panels on the roof. We're targeting BREEAM Outstanding, and your officers note that sustainability credentials go far beyond typical requirements for minor applications such as this, and will deliver significant improvements to environmental performance. Transport impacts are fully tested and signed off by the city's highways officers, as well as TfL, and the construction management plan will be secured by condition to avoid or mitigate impacts on the surrounding streets. In summary, the proposals under the planning application meet or exceed all the city's policy requirements, and they will secure the future of this great building. Thank you.
Thank you very much to all of our speakers, in whatever order it was that they spoke in. So I'm now going to open up, please, to the subcommittee for any questions you may have from the applicants. Madhush Gupta.
Thank you, Chair. Lots of focus is rightly on the groundbreaking rooftop. However, my question relates to the street level and streetscape and the significant opportunity for the developer to ameliorate sympathetically in line with the listing. The current streetscape on Cheapside and Queen Victoria Street at street level and basement level has been a blight. Tenant quality has been poor with frequent vacancies. This is equally a challenge for your tenants at number 1 Poultry. The setback nature of the retail has impacted visibility and footfall. The ground floor and basement has long felt like an underutilised sinkhole. Preferably, it would be a place to linger, not simply pass through. Has the developer considered alternative uses for the ground floor to make it more inviting at the crucial bank junction? Thank you.
Just in case the microphones didn't pick that up, I think the key question there was, has the developer considered more different uses of the ground floor to make it more inviting and opening? Is that correct? Okay, that's just for the record.
Incredibly good questions, and one of the reasons why when we started working with the applicant and building owner on the building, we sought to recognise the fact that the ground floor has never really been well used as a retail destination. Three of the retail units at ground floor were vacant, and so our proposals look to consolidate the amount of retail into a single unit, which is the one that faces Poultry and Queen Victoria Street. There'll be a small cut through on there, which actually provides us with a much larger retail space, but what we are not looking to do is then house any sort of kind of convenience or grab and go type uses in there. That is really going to be something that supports the cultural objectives of the City of London. You will notice that we have put in a charitable arts organisation in collaboration with the Cheapside Business Improvement District. That has been incredibly well received since we integrated those exhibition spaces at ground floor. We've had over 2,500 visitors to that space. Noting the former Oasis unit on Poultry, it is our expectation to either ensure that that space becomes supporting to the commercial use of the building, so it either becomes a second reception or it then becomes supportive of the ongoing use of the building. So a town hall space, a space that members of the public can use as well. We do recognise that there are some shortcomings in the way in which the building meets the ground regarding lighting, around safety, and our proposals, we believe, try to resolve those through sensitive integration of new awnings, of lighting, but also different ways of looking and using those spaces.
Thank you. And I have Tana Atkin next.
I'm afraid I have 2 questions.
That's
fine.
Okay.
First question is, have you read the report by Mr. Bain and what were your thoughts on it? That's number 1.
That's one. Yes, we have. I actually have a copy of it here. Mr. Bain's submission to the members of the subcommittee makes some very good points around the need to invest in the building to ensure that it remains competitive, occupied, and relevant for the future. Unfortunately, the point that Mr. Bain rose around this, the integration of multiple functions simultaneously doesn't work in today's modern office buildings, unfortunately. That is not something that we are in control of. That is market conditions. It is important to note that it is not just the objective of ourselves, of our client, of the applicant, but it is also the wider strategic objectives of the City of London, and that for this building to remain attractive to high quality occupiers, we do need to create some delineation between publicly accessible spaces and spaces that will ultimately be used through future occupation. So we have at a number of points engaged with Mr. Bain during the design and development process, and elements such as the integration of design features that were never delivered have been integrated into our proposals.
Thank you. And your second question.
It seems to me that when public access was looked at, and obviously the design of the building initially was to maximise public access, particularly on the roof garden, and then that was limited by the fact that there was a restaurant there. Was there a thought initially of whether it would be possible to have the roof back to the maximum public access that it was intended to have, or is that just not financially viable? Well, that's why there's now got to be the conversion to offices up there.
So the restaurant, whilst on paper is seen as being attractive to the overall vibrancy of the building, it unfortunately doesn't. It is actually dilutive to the overall value. So what has happened since post-pandemic, the flight to quality, which is quite a well-known statement, I suppose, in commercial offices, means that occupiers are looking for more than just a desk to work at in their place of work, and ultimately one of the shorthand mechanisms for that is quality outside external space for the benefit of building occupiers. Without the roof terrace, this building does not have any of that, and therefore it severely limits the overall value of the building if we're unable in some way, shape or form to provide external space to a commercial occupier. What we have not done is privatized space and then made it inaccessible in perpetuity. We are still opening up that space, the inner garden, the Scala Regia, the balconies, at certain times of year where security and accessibility will permit, so you still will be able to experience this building as it was originally designed. It's just that that cannot be managed on a day-to-day basis. So we feel that the proposals have struck a balance between those two elements as well, but also, and I think most importantly, ring fence and secure free-to-use public access to one of the most incredible views across the City of London.
But it was recognised by you that the building initially was planning to have public access to the whole of that rooftop, and that was one of its main purposes for the public to be able to go in to see this amazing architecture and go up to this massive roof garden.
Oh yeah,
the first of its kind in London. It makes that building so special, doesn't it?
Absolutely, and the building will remain so special.
With only a bit of it.
You will still be able to access that route. However, I think whilst access has been limited by function, it has also been limited by safety. And those are things that have only really ever been addressed ad hoc throughout the 3 decades of this building use. And so we hope that this essentially coalesces all of those challenges and actually brings forward a permanent solution.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I now have Philip Kelvin.
Thank you, Chair. I think I echo some other points on here in that I'm supportive of creating a genuine public benefit on the rooftop. My own personal opinion before I ask my question is that I think the hours are fairly limited, a few hours a day, very limited mornings, or no mornings essentially, some weekend hours. If we put that to the side for the moment, I have a question on discoverability of what is, the most visited junction in the city and how people gain access to it. So I know that there is a mixture of walk-ins and pre-booking. Will there be any signage at street level that advertises the fact that members of the public can go up there, QR codes so they can scan to book in, later that week or later that day? Something that I've found quite frustrating with other city developments up in Bishopsgate and viewing towers that we have. So I'd like to understand both why you landed at 1,400 hours or 1,600 hours, feel free to correct me on that, and what your approach to discoverability of those hours so that this public benefit is actually used.
Yeah. So the hours of use we have put at 1,600 hours. That was increased from an original suggestion of 1,400. And really, that level at this moment in time is predicated on the fact that whilst access can obviously be is provided free to use. It does come at a cost to us as a team because of the security arrangements that are required to support that access. We are, of course, in consultation with case officers around whether or not those hours are sufficient, and I believe the Section 106 draft allows those allows flexibility to either to increase those hours should actually this be an incredibly popular destination. So I think where we stand at this moment in time is that we feel, until proven otherwise, it's an adequate level. In relation to the visibility of access, I believe we've actually got one of the biggest and best frontages on, well, it's actually quite small, but facing Bank Junction. We are almost unapologetically unavoidable in terms of the access that we can provide and the frontage that we can deliver. Obviously, anything that has to be integrated has to be sympathetic with the original architecture, but it is not our intention to hide any of this public access. It is very much to celebrate it. So our proposals, which I don't think we've necessarily been able to cover at the appropriate level at this stage, are very much to make this visible, to make it accessible, to make it market leading in terms of the public access that it can provide. We have also gone to great lengths to ensure that this isn't just a space that you go up to and it's just a view. We have orientation spaces, we have public facilities, we have indoor spaces, and we will also be hopefully able to provide a small concession up there as well.
Thank you. And just to be very clear, as a follow-up, my question wasn't on visibility. I know that we can see the building. It was on discoverability of the space and how you advertise that proactively and how there is signage for that. Maybe that's something that officers can take away. And just one follow-up question. Will you be tracking the usage of the public, the number of bookings and walk-ins, and perhaps officers can take away, if that is the case, any Section 106 review mechanisms that means that you might, if there is significant demand for the space above the hours, if this application was approved, that we could use that review mechanism to demand more hours if demand is there, for example. But
I can say
that's probably a question for officers.
My question to you is just to remind you that it was discoverability, not visibility. And secondly, will you be tracking the amount, the demand for the space?
Yeah, no, we recognise that and respect that, and you very much so.
Great, thank you. Well, they were very good questions. Marianne Fredericks.
Thank you, Chair. Could I just ask, while you're carrying out this refit, why you haven't considered repurposing the skylight on the ground floor, which it sits up and it affects the skyline, the sight lines as you look through Bucklesbury Passage. Why have you omitted that from your refurbishment?
We discussed the lowering of the what I would refer to as a top hat structure in Bucklesbury Passage, I believe in pre-apps 1 to 3, with the members of with case officers. Unfortunately, due to constraints around the existing occupation of that lower ground floor level, concourse level, it is not actually possible for us to integrate and adopt those changes during this refurbishment works of the building. It would be our intention long term to try and improve visibility through Bucklesbury Passage. We just didn't want to put something in our application that we couldn't reasonably deliver.
Thank you. Okay, thank you very much to the applicants. William Upton, and then I think we'll wrap this section up.
Yeah, no, thank you. 2 points, really. I wanted to check. You just mentioned you'd be interested in the concession as part of the rest, sort of the public space. I assume that's something that you've discussed with officers that's been rejected so far, because I do worry about how this is a viable public space. It should be manned by 2 people, I'm presumably not charging. So surely there is a lot of pressure for concession, and if you are thinking of that, where would it go? Because you're closing at the moment to the public at 5 o'clock. I don't know what happens afterwards, so that's the thing. I don't understand the use of the space you're looking for. And then I've got this question about symmetry, because as I understand it, and I look at this, there's a huge part of why this is listed and the design is it's symmetrical. You've introduced an asymmetry. I don't understand the design behind that, because surely that offends against the symmetry. So really 2 points there. I need to understand the design as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, in respect, I'll hand over to Kuros to deal with the reasons as to why we have integrated the platform lift and the asymmetry that introduces. With regards to your question on any concessions, our comment in respect of being able to provide any supporting uses or say supporting objects at roof level is really to get across the point that we do not intend this space to be fundamentally used as a viewing platform towards the city cluster. We want it to have, we want it to be open to members of the public. We want people to be able to come there and have their lunch there. We want this to be an opening and welcome space that people are actively invited into and that they have time to dwell there. I do note your comments with regards to how that then interfaces with any other processes. But I suppose our comment was more pointed at trying to create an inclusive and welcoming environment. Kuros, I'll let you deal with symmetry.
Okay. On your point of symmetry, the fifth elevation is actually not symmetrical as it stands. The building as delivered has a circular staircase of approximately 900 millimeter diameter, radius, which is considered and has been reviewed by consultants and proven to be inadequate as an egress, means of egress, and wouldn't be accepted today as an acceptable means. So we were balancing fitting in an accessible lift that was robust. We've delivered several of these on projects around London. We know what works long term and what doesn't. So we needed an enclosed, effectively small, but substantially big enough to fit wheelchair users in and for them to turn, etc. And we had effectively a dysfunctional means of egress. So we retrofitted the lift inside the old or existing circular opening that's on the roof, and we've introduced a better means of fire egress on the other side, which, you know, we're not comparing something that was perfectly symmetrical with something that is now no longer symmetrical. The staircase follows the profile of the structure of the building and delivers the least impact to the roof structure as possible. That's the reason. The symmetry is not detectable on.
William, you look.
Yeah, could I just one thing that followed on, looking at your design and access statement, which I know into detail, but at one point there seemed to be that there would have been two matching sort of circular structures, reflecting, I suppose, how one perceives the building, because you don't see the staircase at the moment. Why is that not being perceived? Just you have the equivalent visual balance.
Yeah, we did look at many options for lift overruns. There were different types of lift. We looked at this dual drum option, and it was considered to create more harm than a single unit. So if it had no function, it would be, it would have no function, effectively a second turret. And we felt that the one on its own was significantly recessed, that on the views from the Duke of Wellington, it didn't impact significantly on the symmetry of the facade from that viewpoint.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to move us on. Thanks very much to the applicants for answering all of those questions. It's now an opportunity to ask any clarifying questions of our officers regarding their report. I'm going to open it up to the committee. William?
No, thank you. Can I suppose, three things to check with the officers. I suppose the first is about the opening hours. As you will have heard, there's quite concern about how limited it does seem, and what you're expecting in terms of the use and this reference potential concession. Secondly, in terms of, there's a point being made about reversibility, and I don't know how far that goes. Is it that we are being asked to consider the alterations being put forward, including these pavilions, as essentially reversible, or should we be seeing them as permanent? I don't know to what extent this is an intrusion into a listed building or not. And thirdly, I don't know how you approach this point. They said, the applicants, that it was lawfully, could all be converted to office space. Well, there is a planning condition imposed for very clear reasons during a hard-fought public inquiry that maintained that public access. So surely we should be approaching it, and there is a loss of a restaurant space. This isn't a Class E in the classic wider sense, which is a more recent thing. If we were looking at a proposal now, there would have been a similar condition. I think we have to assume that. So can you just clarify how you're approaching the planning condition? So a series of points, I realise.
Thank you for the questions. And just to take with the reversibility point first, the proposals should be treated as if they were permanent additions. They've been assessed on that basis. The officer's conclusions set out in the report that they would be largely harmless. There would be one or two that cause a slight degree of harm, as the report sets out. That is principally the lift overrun, creating the asymmetry you referred to earlier. But otherwise, of course, the report goes on to describe how these design options have been sort of tested to arrive at the scheme before you. So yes, these shouldn't be treated as alterations that might or may not be reversed in the future. It's flagged that they are light touch, so it could be, but that isn't the true part of the consideration here. You should approach the scheme as these are a permanent set of interventions to the listed building for the future.
Picking up on the hours, we hear committee, there is an obligation upon the applicant to submit an annual roof management plan setting out access, and that has to be reviewed annually. But I'm clearly hearing some unease amongst members that maybe the minimum hours, which are the minimum hours set out in the papers, need to be exceeded quite significantly. But that would be for committee to decide upon. If you were coming to that view, that would certainly strengthen officers' hands in further negotiations with the applicant.
Are all your points addressed, William?
There was the point about...
sorry, David.
The condition.
Yes, just about yeah, and you're absolutely right. Obviously, there was condition on the original permission requiring the restaurant to be provided. So whilst that is now within the same use class, Class E restaurant and offices, nevertheless, it does form part of this permission that there is a loss of restaurant use, which obviously does contribute to the mixed-use nature of the building. But it is addressed in the report in terms of we acknowledge that that is the case, and therefore, again, we have assessed it in the round and land use terms, the wider overall mixed use of the building itself, but also the public benefits arising from more and more structured public access to the roof terrace itself. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Deborah Oliver, you're next.
If I could follow up the earlier question about the sort of the glazing, I think it was called the top hat on the ground floor, and also the condition of the sort of underfloor, the basement, the access to Bank Station and things. Has there been any consideration of how we could actually improve the ground floor? I really do think that glazing is a bit of an eyesore, and the levels underneath which give access to the building are also a bit of an eyesore, in my opinion.
Thank you for the question. Yes, the so-called top hat has divided opinion for sure. It was part of a previous consent. We don't have the power to compel its removal, alas. It is something that possibly might be considered in the future. Of course, this scheme does propose light touch enhancements to the Bucklersbury area at ground floor level. The lower levels you described, though, have been ruled out of the scope of this proposal before you today.
Thank you. John Edwards.
Thank you, Tom. Yeah, my question to officers is about, in fact, the CGI we see ahead of us. Is it going to be a condition on actually restoring and eliminating those grand stairs called Scala Riga so that the public can actually get that view? Because I know it's a great CGI, but is that really going to happen? Because I think that's important. And a second question, which is really following on from Philip's good point, which is also near to my heart about signage. Will there be a proper condition that there is signage? Because this and other roof gardens are sometimes not so obvious to the people, particularly the visitors in the city. So signage and that being a reality, please. Can you answer those two?
Yes, absolutely. And there are conditions on the full NLBC permissions, proposed permissions, which would answer those points entirely. So there is a signage strategy required, which should have details of the external and any internal signage to guide visitors to the Prow and the Apex Gardeners, also the wider building users. And as for the doors and the visibility you see here, that would again be realised through detailed conditions requiring sort of 1 to 20 architectural drawings of these elements and so on. So those are all part of the proposals before you.
Thank you. Now, Jackie Webster.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much for the site visit. It was quite an extraordinary site visit as visits go, and clearly the detail, the fabric, everything that we witnessed on that site visit was quite overwhelming in terms of the value and the asset that we have in the city. So we've had a very brief conversation about this, Tom, but it would be really helpful just to give us a sense around compliance and monitoring and safeguarding of the heritage, particularly through construction, because this is a significant building, and have we got the resource in place to be managing these very complex conditions that we will have? John's just alluded to another, so there are multiple conditions. What resource we have to ensure that there is compliance and safeguarding. Thank you.
Absolutely, yes. So in relation to protecting the building as a building of special interest, there are the standard conditions on the permission to require a scheme of protective works to all areas thereby affected. So being proportionate to not the whole building necessarily if there are no works happening to part of it, only those places where intensive works proposed. I'll flag again that the office levels, which are largely neutral in character, where the bulk of this work is taking place. But as well as that, we have conditions requiring those architectural details of the proposed interventions, which themselves are, of course, fairly modest, to deal with the junctions, any fabric to be considered for removal, or that sort of dilemma. This will all be flushed through at sort of detailed post-consent stage, should that be the case. And finally, I would just also add that Historic England have authorised us to determine this application, it being Grade 2 star listed. We need their say-so before we can go ahead. They have given us that with no conditions attached from them, which is positive.
Thank you. Liz King.
And just a quick one. The applicant alluded to the fact that the scheme would not be viable without direct private access from an office in the restaurant. Could you actually explain your thinking about that? I mean, it seems a lot we're messing around with all the lifts and everything else to give them the public the very small public access separately, so office users don't have to go down to the first floor and back up or something, or access through a security gate line at roof level if they want to access it. But if you could talk us through the financial implications for office space with and without in a building like this, that would be very useful.
Well, I would just say that a scheme of this scale hasn't sort of triggered viability questions per se. What we have sought to do is accommodate the applicant's ambitions to create a best-in-class office building here and position it for the assessed demands of the 21st century worker, whilst also balancing the special interests of the building. So that's as far as it's gone in our consideration. Obviously, a key part of that has been the question of the lifts and the rooftop and the restaurant. I mean, the conversion of the restaurant to office, is a significant moment in the building's life. Absolutely, it is a change from the design concept, but it is the closure of a space you had to pay to access fundamentally. The real kind of debate in our minds was the Rotunda Garden and the Apex Garden and how those spaces should be approached. And we think the proposal to create a dedicated elevated public space at the Apex is, a clear kind of positive of the scheme, a clear public benefit. We think the need to provide office amenity externally has been a clear feature of many other schemes in our conversations with the sector. And we think this scheme strikes that crucial balance overall.
Thank you. I'm going to go now to Tana Adkin.
I just wanted to go back on a point that you've answered already, just to make sure that I've got it absolutely clear. So what you're saying is how we should approach this in loss of any rooftop access to the public that was initially intended very much by Sterling. We should approach that as a permanent change, so a permanent loss of public access to some parts of that rooftop that were always intended to be accessible by the public, but also now further restricted. That's a permanent decision that we're making today.
Well, the nature of permanence is always an interesting planning debate, and obviously there are multiple hypothetical scenarios that could arrive at any point in the future. What I would say, though, is that yes, the application proposes a series of measures which you should take as the proposals and not question them. They are what the applicant has submitted and proposed. But I would just say that what the application proposals attempt to do, we think successfully, is cut through the swirl of rumour and hearsay that has surrounded the rooftop uses ever since the building opened, and provide sharper definitions of what should happen up there. And there would be public access maintained, indeed, in our view, enhanced through the provision of this dedicated roof garden with its dedicated separate access, clearly delineated. There would be separate office amenity externally at the roof level. We think this clearer definition of what goes on up there is a benefit of the scheme. But yes, it should be treated as permanent.
And Marianne Fredericks.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Can I just say thank you very much for the site visit. It was an absolute privilege to be able to circulate ourselves around the building, as I suppose it was originally intended for the public to be able to go up that amazing staircase through that tunnel and then explode into the lights. And for those who weren't present, to be able to look up and see the geometry of the interior of the building, which you don't actually get really from the ground floor, was really amazing. And to see the real essence of that building when it was conceived was amazing. But can you just clarify for me the route up to the prow for the public? So, as I recall, we went into the building, and the suggestion would, in this lobby area, there would be a lift that would go up to, I think it was the 5th floor. And then there was this tiny, small, round room that we gathered in, which is quite small. So I want to understand what's the purpose of that small space, the capacity of it. And then I take it you then go up into a lift and you will pop out onto the roof. The capacity, I think you said maximum would be about 80 people if you pull the planting back. And so I want to understand how many people are going to be up there at one particular time without it being congested. You want to be able to see the views. I would think that that capacity is probably limited to the amount of people that can get up into the lift and use that circular lobby space because it's quite claustrophobic. And then could you just explain to us how much public space will be lost by not allowing the public into the secret rotunda garden and any other areas which the public will be denied access to? I mean, I suppose originally the public went up that staircase to the 1st floor rotunda, and that's going to be out of view. So can you give us how much public space will be lost, and so we can weigh up the harm and the public benefit that's being included in the scheme? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for those series of points. I shall endeavour to answer them all, but please remind me if I've forgotten something. So, to start with the last, the Rotunda Garden is, let's remember, a circular walkway, not a fully circular space. So it isn't the full space as described by the circular silhouette, but rather a walkway around it. And then we have the apex garden that adjoins it. So obviously the apex would remain fully publicly accessible. The rotunda would not be. The restaurant area, as I said in a previous answer, we think is of as a place you pay to access rather than a free publicly accessible space. So in our minds, the dilemma or the debate is between the rotunda garden and the apex. Now the rotunda garden is a question of quality and quantity to some extent, because the rotunda garden has this circular walkway, but it also has quite high sheer walls with relatively small window openings piercing it. The key part of the architectural design, but it means that views outside of it are limited comparatively compared with the apex garden, which of course has not those same walls. and much more open and spectacular prospects can be enjoyed from the Apex Garden. So that kind of trade-off seemed to us to be the right one. When it comes to the public use of the Scala Regia, the public use of the Prau, the public uses of all these other spaces, what we have before us are the facts that we are able to possess, which is that from about the millennium, certainly from 2015, the Prau entrance was closed or largely disused. The Scala Regia was disused. We have not been able to find evidence that it was a regular public thoroughfare in the way that has been suggested. So the extent to which it was ever a public right-of-way is not clear. We know it has been used. It was used as intended. That much is clear to us also. But the extent to which this ever was a truly public route, I think there is a touch of uncertainty about, compared with the way in which there is certainty, comparatively, around the commercially led operation of the rooftop. Because although it may well have been possible for members of the public to go up, not buy a Coke at the restaurant and walk around the Rotunda Garden, would 80 people at a time, without paying, ever have been able to make that journey? Question mark. What this scheme proposes is the ability for 80 people at any one time to go up to the Apex Garden free of charge, enjoy the views, and come back down again free of charge. So that is one fact I would lay before you. In terms of the journey up there, one enters this space, and then to the left there is an existing lift shaft and stair, which one would use to ascend to the 5th floor level. Now that space is designed in this scheme as a vestibule area, really. So there is the circular room you described, with its quite interesting tiny window apertures, which give you these picture-framed views of the city and the Bank Junction beyond. There are also public toilets at this level as well, a key part of the facilities for any such space. Then, if one fancies, one can take the stairs extended up to the Apex Garden, which are unroofed, so if in rain you may get a bit wet. If that is the case, you can use the platform lift, which is provided within the circular bronze enclosure to take you up to complete the journey up there. Those are the access arrangements. As we say, it's an 80-person max capacity space. The details of how exactly all of this would work will be worked through in detail in the Section 106 agreement and subsequent management plan, which would be secured in the usual way. Thank you.
Thank you, colleagues. I'm going to move us on now to the debate section. Just a reminder, you don't have to say anything. That's your personal choice. I think we've had very thorough questions from all the different people who have spoken today. So if anyone is moved to say anything in this section, please raise your hand. Go ahead, Gabby.
Thank you. When I started as an apprentice in the dim and distant past, there were two developers that made an impact. One was Sam Chippendale, a gruff Yorkshireman who gave Bradford its first roof garden looking over the city square in Arndale House. The other was swashbuckling Peter Palumbo, or Lord Palumbo as he later became, and who ended up giving us one of the planning battles of the century that brought us One Poultry. It's been compelling today to hear the frustration, to hear the ambition in Lawrence Bain's alternative proposal, but we're not able to consider that. And I feel that the proposal in front of us is sensitive. It gives public access that people are aware of, rather than by design thinking they've got to go up and have a drink or buy a meal. The fact that we could possibly condition further hours makes it even more attractive. So I will certainly be moving for the proposal. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gabby. And John Edwards.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I also support this application. I think the fact that we can walk up the stairs, and we'll be able to, is a plus. There's only one other garden in the city where you can walk up. And I think that's important because, you know, some people, not all, but some people working in the city are forced to use lifts. That's how they get to work. And when they've got, 40 minutes, an hour for lunch, to have the ability to actually walk to an interesting place and have their sandwich is something special, particularly there where the views are tremendous. So I think that's a huge selling point, that you can walk up to the public garden. And the second point is, again, these thick grand stairs we're looking at, they're actually not that comfortable to walk on. I mean, they look grand, but the tread-step ratio is kind of weird. It's not a fluid stairs at all. It's like, to me, it's a 20th century folly. So I think having it eliminated and then observed by the public whenever they enter there is a great way of actually utilising a piece of architecture which is really to look at rather than actually use. So both cases, I think these are improvements to the building, and I welcome this application. Thank you.
Thank you, John. I have the Deputy Chairman and then Tana.
Thank you, Chair. A couple of points I'd like to just make known and clear. I mean, I think that there's little point in us having sort of dormant monuments that celebrate brilliant architecture. We have to have buildings that are vibrant, that are full of people, and that people can enjoy work in and go shopping in and so on. And to my mind, we know that the secondary office market has struggled. It continues to struggle. And if we're able to bring this building up to an attractiveness level that allows it to be used as a full office, then I think we should encourage that. With what I see as a very minimal uplift. I mean, it's less than 1% uplift in space overall that's being asked for. So I do feel the applicant's been very sympathetic in their approach to how they treat what is a celebration of architecture. I think one other aspect that really comes to my mind is how retail has flagged on Cheapside in recent years. We know it's struggled, and one of those reasons has been the way that this building has configured its retail in the past. I don't think it's naturally drawn people out of Bank to come and shop along that route. Hopefully, the plans that have been put in front of us today encourages more retail activity on the ground floor plane, and that hopefully will spread wider down Cheapside, down towards St Paul's, and encourage that ground floor businesses to thrive. The public access piece, I think, is very, very relevant here and actually celebrates what was supposed to be happening in the first place without the need to buy a cup of Coca-Cola. You will be able to go up there and just enjoy the space for what it is. And I think that's a really important piece of that free access point that we have embodied within our destination city policies. The last piece is around improved sustainability, and one of the big changes that we are going to see, when we look at the sort of facade changes in the glass use and so on, is to improve the sustainability credentials of this building. And obviously this was built and designed way before we had any sustainability SPDs or policies. I think to bring it up to those standards will make it a more attractive building is something we should be actively encouraging to make sure that a building that is a real celebration of architecture is still relevant in today's world, and I will be supporting it on that basis, Chair.
Thank you, Deputy Chair. And Tana Akin.
The first point is this is a heritage asset. So beginning from that point, I don't hold with the use it or lose it philosophy in relation to public access. This building was designed with public access in mind and the public enjoying all of the symmetry and so on that we've heard about today. If the public are not being welcomed into a heritage asset such as this, that to me is a failure of ownership, not a failure by the public because they are not being told about or having the place shared with them. And so I find myself in that position of a conflict, again, as we see very often on the planning committee, a conflict between heritage and commercial viability. And I'm afraid I come down in favour of heritage on this one, Chair, and I will not be voting in favour of the applicant.
Thank you very much. So I'm going to draw this to a conclusion. And you've just heard... Okay, I'm going to take... I think we're getting to the point where we need to take a vote on this. So, Marianne, I'll take you. William Upton.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you. It's a shame it's not a pick and mix because there are some things in this refurbishment which I think will improve the building, and there are other aspects which I think would be detrimental. And the main point being the fifth dimension, the roof elements, and I call it the secret garden, the rotunda. It's a secret garden. It's got no visuals of the city. It's nice and safe and peaceful. I think what will happen if you start altering the public routes through the building and remove the scenic lift. The whole point about the scenic lift was to, as you went up the building, be in touch with this dramatic building. It's more than just a building. It's an arrival, it's an experience, it's really appreciating art and architecture and public use. And so those scenic lifts were integral to bringing you up into the roof, into that secret garden, and then that dramatic entrance into the prow. You've arrived on Bank, you've arrived in the City of London. And I think that experience is not going to be achieved by having the lift pop up on one side. But that lift in itself does worry me because it does start ruining the symmetry of the building. But as Historic England said, it's livable. I get concerned about the fact that we have developers have obligations, as the Chief Planning Officer said, and we have conditions. And here we are, we've got a condition that was cemented into this scheme via the planning appeal. And here we are 30 years on removing that. So where does that leave us with all these public benefits that we're delivering on all our buildings across the city, many of them of which have restaurants? So for us to argue that because there was a restaurant here wasn't public use, I think is very confusing and very wrong of us. So I think that the condition was that the public had the access to the roof and it wouldn't be turned into an office to ensure that public access. And I think for us to just suggest that the scheme can't work if that small space becomes an office, I think says that the City of London really isn't thriving and we're not doing our job, because I think this building is more than capable of having an occupier that understands the building, appreciates the building, and ensures that the public access can continue to thread its way through the building up to the roof. It delivers something that the other roof areas that we have across the city do not deliver. And you can only do that by the scenic lift into the secret garden, and then you're delivered onto the prow of the building. And I think that's the dramatic element of this building that should be removed permanently if we grant this scheme. And unfortunately, because it's not pick and mix, because I can't say I don't mind this, but I can't support that, I therefore will have to refuse the scheme. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Marianne. And finally, William Upton.
No, thank you, Chairman. And I'm glad this has come to committee. This is such an iconic building. And grade 2 stars don't come around very often. And as you have heard, it's not exactly an easy decision that they've given us. But this isn't just the original designers worrying about this. I know our Conservation Area Committee and the City Heritage Society all find this on the wrong side of what's acceptable. I do consider often that when people get refused, they often learn from the refusal and come back with something that's more acceptable. I find the point that this is going to be permanent, because the report refers to reversibility. We can't apparently take that into account. And this is a permanent change, losing part of what was part of the listing, which was the restaurant and public space. The offer in the 106, as I think the offer said, they need a slightly stronger offer. Well, certainly the minimum doesn't seem to give us very much, ending at 5. I find this so tricky because, as it's been said, there are some good things about this, but they really haven't given us enough to outweigh the incredible, important question. This is a grade 2 star listed building, where part of the listing includes the restaurant and the public space above. And if you're going to change that, you've got to have a very good case. So I do urge people to reconsider that this is not clearly the end of the debate, but what they've presented to us is the wrong side of the line.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Upton. So, colleagues, we come to the vote. I suppose I would reflect on the fact that when the building that's there today was built, I think 8 listed buildings were demolished in order to make way for it. And therefore, what you're seeing today, relatively minor changes, are of an order of magnitude many, many times different to that which brought us One Poultry. I think really the decision we're being asked today is about your appetite for change. We are seeing a proposal which is a more sustainable building, a higher quality office space, new public space and a public space that works better and has much more clarity in how it's expressed. That said, there is, of course, as you've heard, the loss of a restaurant, and that's the change that your appetite will now need to be comfortable with. On a couple of points, I think our responsibility to heritage assets, I would agree with the Deputy Chair, is actually to see them expressed through our policies as modern, livable, usable buildings, not simply to be preserved as they were. And my sense is that this building actually delivers that rather sensitively. And on another point around the fact that there is an existing planning permission and various conditions on that, this committee and any planning committee is always at liberty to amend any historic conditions and any historic planning permissions, else nothing would ever change. And so that's a point that I hope you bear in mind when you come to your vote. Therefore, I'd like to bring us to a vote, and let me just double check what specifically we're voting on. It's on my next page. Officers have made the recommendation that we resolve that the Planning and Development Director is given delegated authority to issue decision notices granting planning permission and listed building consent for the proposed developments, subject to the matters set out in the recommendations, which are on page 8 and 268 of your packs, if you want to read them in full. Therefore, if I could ask all of those in favour of the officer recommendation to please raise their hand and keep it up while we count, please. Thank you. And against? And those abstentions? Therefore, we have 9 votes in favour, 6 votes against, 1 abstention, and planning permission listed building consent is granted. Thank you to everyone who came today, and thank you for a productive and thoughtful debate, colleagues. Items 5, 6, and 7 are starred on the agenda. We haven't been asked to unstar them, so they're just being taken for information. Can I ask, I don't think any questions were submitted in advance, so there are no public questions. The meeting of the subcommittee scheduled for Wednesday, 6th of May has been cancelled due to lack of business, but we will still meet as a Planning and Transportation Committee briefly to appoint the committee's subcommittees for the year ahead and reappoint or appoint the chairman and the deputy chairman for the next municipal year. Therefore, the next meeting is 10 a.m. on Thursday, 28th of, the next meeting of this subcommittee is 10 a.m. Thursday, 28th of May. I have one item of any other business, and it's very good news, which is the City of London won the 2026 Lee Kuan Yew World City Prize. Actually, all of London won it, but the City of London was a part of that award. The judges recognised achievements in creating livable, vibrant, sustainable urban developments. Our Destination City Growth Strategy and our City Plan 2040 were right at the heart of the judging panel's decision. That is an award which will be, I think, given in Singapore later in the year. So just congratulations to all concerned, to all of London, and to all of the officers involved in that on the city side. So well done. Thank you, colleagues, very much for coming today. Great meeting.